Sweet. All right, take two.
Cool.
All right, Cole. Welcome back to Austin.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, it was the quite the adventure that we met on last time in a Chick-Fil-A order line after a Chris Williamson live show.
Yeah, I love how, although it definitely wasn't random, I love how random it did seem at
Yeah.
first. Just like, oh, I'm about to order like a chicken sandwich, but I'm hearing these guys talk about a podcaster I liked, albeit it was like a 2-minute walk from where we saw it. I was actually like, I was walking towards the Chick-fil-A and I was kind of eavesdropping in on y'all's conversation. Like, oh, this is a nice conversation, like post-talk conversation. But I think one thing is, I think a lot of my friends and people I surround myself with kind of, at least as of now, perceive me as this like super outgoing, like, you know, just like not afraid of any like social awkwardness, just go out and do it. And I think that's how it appears on the outside because I made that choice. But like, I'll say like walking into that Chick-fil-A, I was like, I don't really feel like talking right now. Like, I'm kind of like tired from like being locked in on like the show.
And a 3-hour drive from Dallas.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think I had like plenty of other things before the drive too. Just a busy day. But I think so many like social interactions and just in general with life, it comes down to like a single decision.
Yeah.
And then after you make that single hard decision, it just kind of flowers out from there.
Yeah.
So I just was like, oh, I'll turn around and say hi. You know, like worst case, they're like, oh, like fuck this guy. Like we want to talk by ourselves.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, I'll just order my chicken sandwich and eat by myself.
Yep. Yeah. And it like, I've made similar like decisions in life as well to do that. Cause like I used to be, much more like, and we were talking about this before on air of like controlled versus spontaneous kind of social situations where I used to be much more like, okay, I got to make sure I know what's going on, like have control when I was younger and more like generally like socially anxious. But I was like, okay, this dude's talking to us. He's like the Chris Williamson show. It's like, yeah, when did you start listening to him? It's like, all right, you just go like find a spot to sit down and
you're
we'll
like,
come
go
find
sit down. I'm going to come talk to you. Like, I was like, hell yeah. Like, I'm here for it. I'm here for it. It's fun. Yeah. I think one thing, being young or just having social anxiety in general is you think that more control will make the anxiety better. But generally you're just like grasping at something you can't control. Cause I mean, that's the beauty about social interactions. It's not, you're not talking to yourself, you know, like, I have no idea like what you're gonna say next.
Yeah.
You know, like we work together and like we generally have an idea of where we're going. But I love being surprised and I love, you know, just working together in that way. And I think it's very fulfilling kind of taking your thoughts away from yourself for a bit, you know. Especially when you're super driven and you're constantly thinking, that can be a big source of anxiety, like constantly thinking about like, oh, I need to do this right. And oh, like self-improvement, like I need to improve this about myself. And I think interacting with someone, you almost always have to be present, at least if you want to have a good conversation.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of beauty in that.
Yeah, because it's a game. It's a game of like we were playing pickleball this morning and like we were talking about like after we played like 5 games in a row of like coming back over, it's like we had plays that had never been made before. Ever of like this like crazy like side hit that I got, and then you got this like tiny like it was chipped over the net and you barely hit it over. It's like those are interactions no one practiced, and if you had total control they never would happen. And it's same with a lot of like social interactions and relationships. If we put like the constriction on it, like it wouldn't be a world we want to live in.
Yeah, I think so much of the fun in life is the unpredictability of it. You know, I just love novel experiences, even if there's not like a strong positive connotation associated with it. You know, even if it's like a negative experience, like, I don't know, like dislocating my kneecap or something and like going to the ER. It's like, okay, that sucked, but it's like a cool story. And it wasn't like, I never have experienced anything else like that. It's like, oh, that was interesting. Like, I think it really opened my mind to like what shock feels like and like high amounts of pain. And I think it's just fun having novel experiences. I think I'm overly optimistic about them.
Yeah, but it's like the one thing that we like. I guess the 2 things that we like go to our deathbed with are people and the memories we make.
Yeah.
And it's like memories come from these like just they come from new things. Like with the routine just kind of fades into the background. It's like blips on like a I don't know if like a heart monitor you get the blips that come up. That's like kind of what memories are. It's like these big like whether they're perceived as positive or negative, it's like still big blips that make an impact. And I think that's generally what we want in life is like the blips on the radar.
Yeah. I think but I also think one interesting thing to talk about is like you have like your like explicitly conscious memories of like, oh, you can recall that.
Yeah.
But I think so much of our memory is just like subconscious.
Yep.
And I love the feeling when like you're talking about something and just something will randomly pop up to you from your past. You're like, oh, this is exactly what I needed like in the conversation. And I wouldn't have remembered that unless the specific context was brought up. I think there's like an interesting thought experiment that I always love asking people that kind of deals with this idea of subconscious memory. And then also kind of goes into like the soul and stuff, which is these like a group of like people come to you and say, hey, like we're going to pay you $1 billion. But for every night, we're going to wake you up. We're going to torture you, but then we're going to erase any memory of it happening. Where also there's going to be no lasting physical like effects. Somehow they'll be able to restore your sleep also. And so you're going to be living the majority of your life not knowing that you're being tortured. Is that still affecting you? Like what would you say? Like, what would you do?
What would I do?
Yeah.
I don't know. Like and the exchange is you get that for $1 billion. Like you get $1 billion for going through that experience. Is that what the trade is?
Yeah, I mean, just pretty much any obscene amount of money.
Yeah,
like just put a number on it. I think it's more like
what would it take?
Like, because what I'm getting at here is there still something left behind from that experience, even if like you consciously can't remember it?
Yeah, you know, like if you just can't recall in like intentional memory, whether there's something there still in the subconscious that's kind of like your body kind of knows it happened. And of course it's like a hypothetical and they're like, oh yeah, we can make sure there's no like lasting effects on your body. But like, I think there is something to like the soul, the unconscious kind of remembers, like when you think of like how we're raised, like those formative years as a child, you like, you can get into all the like kind of podcasty, like language of attachments, all this stuff. But there is something to like the body and the soul, the subconscious kind of remembers things that we aren't like intentionally trying to like recall.
Yeah. I think that's something that I think a lot of people attribute to the soul or the spirit. And I think it's just similar to a lot of other subjects where it's like, oh, it's kind of obscure to us and we don't know, so we're going to relate it to the immaterial.
Yep.
Which then I would ask, why does pushing it off into the immaterial realm explain it anymore?
Yeah.
You know,
it's a mystery. Yeah.
Yeah. I think even when I considered myself like a very committed Christian, to like the traditional Christian at least, I in a certain way considered myself a materialist in saying like, I believe all matter is material and there's some matter that we just don't understand, and not only not understand, but maybe it's physically impossible in our current like state to understand. Like it's unknowable basically. And like, sure, we can call that immaterial, but why not just call it material? Like, what's the difference between like the spirit realm and the physical realm? You know, I think a lot of people just use it as a way to push off problems they don't want to talk about.
Yeah, it kind of does push it beyond like, I don't know, it puts it into a realm that's like, gives yourself like distance from it a little bit. It makes me think like there's, I took a course in college on death and afterlife in the ancient world.
Cool.
And we started with like Gilgamesh as kind of like a relationship to death, but we got into like the Homeric poetry and how Odysseus, like interacts with, like he goes on this like kind of like halfway into the ocean, like this underworld-ish kind of thing where he can like recall like ghosts and interact with ghosts to figure out where he's going to go. And the ancient, like that conception there was, it almost was this like material stuff. They were spirits. They looked kind of like how you and I were, but if I went to like touch your shoe right here, it would go pass through. It was almost like a smoke. So like this like material thing, it's like material, semi-material, different stuff. Kind of like it's other. It's like fragmented, not quite like the same as it is now. It's like disparate. I don't know how exactly that connects or what it like adds to this, but it's like people have not always conceived it as this like split of like immaterial here. It's the spirit realm, conscious stuff, and then the material here. But there's this kind of like relationship of it somewhat being same, slightly different, and wrestling with that.
Yeah, I think. Well, that's an interesting thing because the spirit realm can't be completely like unknowable and ineffable because then we as physical beings wouldn't be able to experience it.
Yeah.
So it's not like there's somewhere where it touches, obviously, because that's where you get like miracles and divine revelation. It's the spirit realm coming down and making contact with the physical realm. But yeah, I think I was just bringing that up to say like why do we bring up the spiritual realm? Like I'm just asking that because, and I think the reason is because we just use it as like a little like place to shove off ideas that we don't understand, like or like free will. I think a big conversation when it comes to like determinism is like you don't have free will because of cause and effects and everything follows the thing before it. And then you're like, oh, well, free will exists because we have spirits. And it's like, okay, why does that like change the argument when you get to the immaterial realm? Like, how is it different?
Yeah, it's kind of like a, I don't know if it's circular, but it's like, I don't know. It's kind of like if you're like exploring the origin of life and you just kick the can down the road by saying, oh, aliens put us here. It's like, well, where'd the aliens go? And then it's kind of like that thing of like pushing it to the spirit. Like it's this kind of like ineffable thing. But I kind of want to get into like, we've been kind of talking about religion. You mentioned like, used to be a little bit more traditional Christianity. And that's kind of what we danced around in that 2-hour Chick-fil-A conversation. My buddy, Zach, like very like Catholic and then talking about some of this stuff. So let's go ahead and get into like, what is your relationship and background with religion, Christianity, and like, how has that led to things of like how you are trying to be more like spontaneous, welcome that? Because that's probably coming from some place you probably weren't that at some point because you made the choice.
Yeah. I think before I kind of get into it, I will bring up an interesting point that I don't think I can tell you why I believe in what I believe. I can just kind of look at my past and explain, like, try to like dissect the experiences that I went through.
Yeah.
And I came out on the other side and be like, oh, well, maybe I can explain it.
But like without kind of knowing the like impetus, the thing that the spark that started the fire is like a loose analogy.
Yeah, I like that, but I would go even farther than that, to the point where like if you ask me right now, why do I believe in what I believe in, I'd be like, I have no fucking clue. Like I have no fucking clue. Like yes, I can do a great job of like dissecting my brain and explaining it, but it's like why? I can't answer any why questions. I think it's as humans, we do a really good job of explaining things away. Like I love when talking about this subject, I love bringing up this study that was done with like split brain patients.
Yeah.
So like the
like
corpus callosum
and stuff like
Yeah. So it's split. So right brain and left brain, they can't communicate with each other anymore. And right brain is connected to the left eye, left connects to the right. And they would show a split brain patient. They would show the left eye, the right brain, an instruction. Like they'd be sitting down in a chair, and the instruction would say, "Get up and walk to the corner of the room." So they'd get up, they'd walk over, and then they would ask the patient, ask the left brain, because the left brain is the verbal part of the brain. Say, why did you get up and walk across the room?
I'd be like, I don't know.
That's what you would expect. It's like, hey, like, I don't know. But no, they fabricated a reason.
Oh, interesting.
They said, oh, well, I was just getting some air, or I wanted to look at the painting over there. We're so good, and we're so convinced that we're able to explain what we do. And I think think a lot of people need to take a little bit of humility in that and be like, maybe I am just a product of my environment. And not only like, do I do the things I do because of the causes that came before, but I don't even necessarily know how that works because it's all so mysterious. So I just bring that up to say, I can't even tell you why I believe in what I do now. So I'm not going to be able to tell you how I made this change, like why, but I can tell you what happened during that time. And that's something also interesting that I'd like to get into later is like belief and how one thing I realized having this revelation was like, why am I don't feel like I'm evil here. Like not only do I not feel like I'm making like an evil choice to not believe in this, it's like I didn't even make the choice. I don't even know why it's happening to me. So how could, I think when we start associating faith and belief as like a virtue, it's like, I just can't connect with that on any level, but I'll go ahead and get into, that was a very long preface to answering the question.
I think it's interesting. We were talking about like on the drive, the kind of the ineffability of some of like of experience of trying to like get what like personal experience that I had kind of like you can't really communicate that and get that experience fabric of reality from my brain into your brain. It's like you're kind of tossing around it. Like, and it's, so I think that that's kind of what you're alluding to is it's hard to communicate stuff and we try to have a reason for it when it can kind of like neuter the special stuff of those kind of experiences.
And I guess maybe that's why we are very good at convincing ourselves that we can explain it so that we can communicate it with people. So I'm not saying like, oh, like this is like all in vain and this is like bad to try to explain. Like we should just admit that we know nothing about ourselves and why we do what we do. I think it's good to attempt to.
Yeah.
But one analogy I like to use is something I got from like a kind of obscure branch of computer science. It's a branch called knowledge representation. And what it mainly covers is something that applies to a lot of different other branches, but this particular subset has been left behind. But it talks about how in a computer, the whole point of like computer programs is representing something in a certain way so you can manipulate it. So for example,
interesting.
Yeah, so for example, let's say I make e-bikes and I have a certain model of an e-bike that I want to test over like 1,000 miles, see how it'll hold up. Well, I could go and ride it for 1,000 miles, or I could make a model in a computer program and run it through a system where it basically simulates it, right? And the idea with making that representation of the bike is like you would think I want to get the representation as close as possible to the real thing. Because I mean, that's like in the word, like I'm trying to represent it.
Yeah.
But by definition, if it is exactly like the bike, then it would be the bike. It wouldn't be the thing in the computer program, right? And so I think I always relate this to experience and then our explanation or knowledge of it.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, experience is the bike in person. And then we try to make a model of that experience, right? But by default, by definition, it's only a model. So it will never be that base level experience.
Yeah. Yeah. And you called that knowledge representation?
Yeah.
And I think that's what like words and symbols and images are, is they're kind of like, we have at my college, there's this room, kind of up in the library, really cool room. It's got like a bunch of great thinkers from like 2000 BC on to the like Declaration of Independence. And it starts with this symbol on the wall. I think it was like the first documented use of the word like freedom in like ancient Sumerian. And it's all in like symbols. And it was that of an arrow. And arrow, I forget the connection of how it got from arrow to freedom, but it's like that's an image, a word that's kind of trying to represent this hard to describe thing. It's like an arrow flying through the air is this kind of free thing. That's kind of like a fun anecdote to talk about that it's trying to represent knowledge and take from something in here, a concept, and put it in your mind. Yeah. Even though it's kind of tossing to the side of it, like getting close, kind of like you can't ever hit the bullseye, but you can kind of like toss around it and try to give a vibe almost of to the other person.
Yeah, and I think that's so important. It's like I don't want this to be seen as like pessimism, like, oh, we'll never be able to like fully explain. I'm like, yes, that's true, but like that's just, I think we just have to work around that and understand that. And I think so much of communication is we all have these like completely separate experiences of the world, like completely separate. Like I love like the phrase, like we're all like stuck in our own heads.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because really there's like, and the only way, and what I think communication and language is joining those experiences and trying to get people to understand your experience and trying to understand theirs.
Yeah.
And I have a friend who I love how he puts this. He says language at the end of the day it's meant to end in silence. Because the ultimate goal is that we finally do understand our experiences.
Yeah.
Because think if I was sitting inside your head, then we wouldn't need to talk because I know all of your thoughts and I know all of your experiences and there's no reason to communicate.
Yeah.
And so that is the ultimate goal. I don't think it's technically possible to reach the goal, but I think it's good to head in that direction. So I still haven't answered your question from like 20 minutes ago, but I can go ahead and get into specifically my path with like traditional Christianity if you want.
Yeah, go for it.
So I think the biggest reason, like what we've been talking about for like the past 10 minutes was just that I can explain it the best I can, but so much of it is ineffable.
Yeah.
Right. So I think the biggest thing for me was, and this is only realizing this in retrospect, this wasn't some like revelation I had at the time, but I realized that my relationship to truth changed. And not only my idea of truth, but my relationship to it. Because I think there's kind of, I'll explain that later on, but
kind of like how you saw what truth was a little bit.
Yeah. And like how you utilize it and how you use it or abuse it. Because I would say that some people, they build idols of truth because they take for truth something that it isn't. And I would say that because I personally believe truth is more of like an elusive, amorphous, just blob of like basically just all that is. But I think so many people want it to be this like firm, like this is it, and it's like unchanging. And not only is it unchanging, but we all experience it in the same way. And also it's completely separate from our experience. Even though we're trapped in our heads, like how can I know anything outside of my experience is true? That goes into like some interesting thing to look into is Descartes' demon, which is basically, like I could have a demon right now controlling everything that I perceive. The only thing I can know is that I exist because you can't trick something not existing into thinking it exists. But I bring that up to say that basically you can prove nothing outside your own experience. And I think that ties into truth because it's like, I can't say technically with that, there's no such thing as objective truth, only in the way that if it's something we agree on. Because like another interesting definition of truth.
Like as that, like are you saying like that are you saying right there that what's agreed upon is the objective truth, like the kind of in that traditional Christian kind of thing, it's like used and treated as it's this thing that we agree upon that is hard and firm?
I would say no.
Okay.
I would say I personally like the definition. If we're gonna talk at all about objective truth, then it is something that we all agree upon, and I can get behind that. But I think Christianity, at least traditional Christianity, and just a lot of religions and a lot of our ancestors, they take it one step farther and say, no matter what we agree upon, there's this it exists. Like realism, like with ethics and stuff, you like realist and anti-realist, I think is the word for them. And it's like this truth exists outside of our experience. So I would just disagree with that. And so that's what kind of alienated me from the Christian faith. And I think it's retrospectively like, oh, yeah, it was like a shift in my relationship with truth. and realizing that most people, they idolize truth and take it for something it's not. Because it's nice. It's really comforting saying like, oh, like no matter what I believe in, no matter what anyone else tells me, there's this like objective truth out there, and I just need to find it, or I need to find someone that can tell me about it. And I think that's just imagining something that you want to be true. But I personally, this is a big frustration I had as a kid, was always like looking at certain like scientific findings or something and seeing how they looked like they contradicted, or just in general this feeling that truth is so elusive, and it frustrated me to no end. Like it would like be like to the point where I'd be like hopeless, just like I can't figure anything out. But I think I was just taking truth for something it's not, and really realizing that truth is so relative and elusive in a certain sense. So that was probably my biggest, and that's all like a high level look at it.
Yeah.
Like specifically getting into the details, like I just started with, oh, like I think all Christian doctrine was one divine revelation, or a series of divine revelations, like over like during like a 100-year period 2,000 years ago.
Yeah.
But it's like, no, Christian doctrine is an amalgamation of like cultural influences over the years, like big like influential thinkers, and like the interpretation of a text that has gone through like 3 massive language changes.
Yep.
And so it's like, oh, like this isn't like what I thought it was. And it was very concerning at first. But once I got past that, I was like, okay, I think so much of, and we can also get into, I'm like big into nihilism. And I think so much of happiness and contentment with life is letting go of desires that I think are faulty. And I would say one faulty desire is, and faulty in the way that it's just like, it's not achievable. Like if I have a desire that is literally impossible to satisfy, then I think that's an invalid desire, and I need to get rid of it. I need to let it go. And so I would say that for what people desire for truth. But yeah, that's a very long summary of my experience with that.
Yeah, and I think the point of like, I guess like, makes me, what you were talking about there for a little bit makes me think of like, there's the philosophical idea of a theory, which theory, the word derives from the Greek that has to do with like theater, or like a kind of like a vantage point. You're looking from a vantage point.
Okay.
So it's like, and then a theory, and then also like you're talking about these different scientific things that seem like contradictory. Like I'm not extremely well versed in like the progression of science, but like generally there's like quantum theory and then like general relativity that seem to be kind of like these two things. We don't know how they fit together, but both of them seem to offer something. And I think it's the philosophical idea of theory kind of represents like both of these are certain ways of looking at things. Yeah. Like one is it's like the wave duality theory of light, how it's both seems to be like a particle under some like kind of vantage, but then you can also look at it from like a wave standpoint. And I think that's going to your experience in your head and my experience in my head. They come from different theories almost, and we're trying to like build that. I think that is kind of the human urge and almost project to an extent, is like taking what we're seeing from and like building a kind of theory, a way of looking at things, building like a kind of consistent thing. I think that is the human, like, I think you use the word desire, and you might question whether you can actually like create something that's like completely coherent. But I think that's like, that is the human urge, is to like build some kind of like world that's like seems consistent to us, and that's like a theory. It's like my vantage point. So it sounds like your theory of truth ended up like, okay, your vantage of it, how you kind of conceived of it, something that like penetrated the world that you were living in, and then kind of like broke it, kind of.
Yeah.
And so where do you think you kind of, so you said now you're kind of like into nihilism, and that's kind of like kind of your new way of approaching it? Would that be kind of accurate to say that?
And when you say like approaching it, do you mean like approaching religion as a whole, or like approaching like how to find happiness?
Kind of like your approach to life, kind of.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of part of your new way of looking at things. Is you used to look at your relationship to truth as this like it's this hard, fast thing that's got to be like firm.
Yeah.
And now your vantage is like, okay, it's a lot harder to like pin down what actually is, and so you're probably going to get into that with like nihilism a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a very good question, because I guess I've never thought of it when we think of nihilism, or at least when I think of nihilism personally, it's more of like, oh, how to be happy, and like, or just dealing with like, or being depressed and like not wanting to be depressed anymore. But I think it is true. I think it's cool that you mentioned like it. I guess it does actually probably educate my whole worldview, for sure. I think, because I guess I was bringing that up earlier with like just saying like you need to give up the desire for like how you view truth, how you want truth to be like. So yeah, getting into that, I think, well, first I would like to talk about, I think I'll just go straight for happiness.
Yeah.
And so one thing is, as like a young Christian, like very like traditional conservative Christian, I hated like when people would say, "Oh, I'm just trying to be happy.
Yeah.
I'm just looking for happiness." Because I think it's just because of a misunderstanding. Because when I thought of happiness, I associated it with a more like pleasure,
like hedonism almost.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the image that comes to mind.
Yeah. And I would be like, "Oh, I'm not searching for happiness. I'm searching for purpose. I'm searching for meaning." And I think Aristotle really nips this in the bud in his Nicomachean Ethics, where, because a big part of that is like how to live a happy life, basically, or I think the like Greek word is eudaimonia or something.
Yeah.
And
it's good spiritedness, kind of is the vibe of that word.
Yeah, but then it's like, it does translate into like kind of like virtue and like in that way, but then it's also it can translate into happiness. It's definitely like a nuanced word.
Yeah.
So I understand me calling it happiness isn't like getting the whole picture.
Yeah.
But at some degree, it's talking about happiness.
It can be also like well-being is another kind of like trend.
Okay.
Like a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, well, and we can use whatever word we want, but what Aristotle gets at is, he talks about like, okay, like, why are you working? Oh, to provide for my family. Why are you providing for your family? Oh, because I feel fulfilled when I interact with, like, when I like provide for my family. Why do you feel fulfilled? Oh, well, I feel a certain way. What do you like? And at some point you're going to get to a base level, and everyone's going to have that base level where it's like this certain thing is feeding like water falling down through all these like levels of why.
Yeah.
Right. And we can call that whatever. I'm going to call it happiness. I think that's.
But that's the end of the why ladder almost, is that thing that's like you're pursuing the reason why you're working hard for your family, for fulfillment, for happiness is kind of that last, like, that's what the final why ends up kind of being.
Yeah, it's like axiomatic. It's like, okay, this is a reason within itself why to do it. And I think a lot of people will say like, oh, that's meaning, is that base level or purpose. And I would just argue like, at least how we use the words purpose and meaning and how I see people like seek them, I would say, if anything, purpose and meaning come before that last.
Like having meaning, like you pursue meaning so that you become happy rather than like, okay.
Yeah. And I say that because, maybe I can't exactly explain why, but I would just say when people say like, oh, like, I need meaning, I need to know why I'm on this earth. I feel like it's really easy to ask the question. I feel like it's hard to be like, oh, okay, like that's your axiomatic, like that's where everything comes from. It's just your meaning. My gut intuition is like, well, why do you need meaning? But with happiness, it's like, why do you need happiness? I feel like that's like
Mm-hmm.
more invalid. And that's just, I can't really objectively defend that. That's
Mm-hmm.
more of just like my personal experience with those words.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, the biggest thing is, okay, happiness. That's what we all want. And you can call it meaning if you want. I personally don't think you should, but
perhaps an interesting word is kind of like resonance is a word that I really like, of some kind of like, I don't know, like kind of sensation of belonging in the world a little bit of,
okay.
At least that's how I've kind of seen it in my life, of this, like, at least the connotation of happiness tends to be this like general positive emotion. That's like the connotation. I understand what you're getting at, like it as a thing. And I think it's more of like at least how I can like conceive it in my life, is this maybe not contentment, but like rest with like my existence almost, of like, because I can tell, like, if having happiness is this baseline in your conception of like why I'm doing things for, I can tell when I'm not there, and that like, okay, there's something out of line in my life.
Yeah.
There's something that doesn't resonate with whatever this like baseline kind of like gut emotive soul spirit thing that like we kind of use as the catch-all, as we were kind of talking about earlier, the spirit, like this something ethereal, like experience of life thing that I think there's a lot of like, you can tell when that's off, and you can tell when that's there. And at least that's been my experience of life. And we're going to go like sit around a campfire later today and have some beers and brats and stuff. And like, there's going to be some of that, like kind of happiness resonance of something that's right about this.
Yeah.
Where like, when we're like alone, lonely on a Friday night, and like there were some times that would happen back in college, and it's just like, there's something that's not that's going on. So
Yeah.
I don't know how that exactly connects, whether it's like happiness, like, I don't know. We don't have a word that, like, I think eudaimonia is like in the Greek sense encapsulates that well, but we don't have a word that translates to that very well.
I like what you brought up there, because I think it reminded me of also a definition of pleasure and pain, which I think utilitarians use a lot when like deciding like we need like the overall most pleasure, least pain, or like you can say happiness and suffering. I like happiness and suffering better. It seems like a bit more thick, saying those. But you can say, you can define happiness as just something that we go towards, something that we want. And then suffering is something we avoid. It's very simplistic. And like, yes, experiences, like sometimes we don't know what we want, right? And sometimes we don't like, and so I think people immediately hear that definition. It's like, oh, that's too simplistic. And it's like, it's like I think it's like a nice pithy, like, this is the general concept that's at play. And so I bring up like all of this, like definition of happiness, like going into nihilism, because one thing I think is, okay, we're all seeking this one thing, whatever the hell it is. And I think a lot of people, they don't find it in themselves. And so then they go to like external sources.
Outsource it.
Yeah. And I think that's where meaning comes into play, because they like this objective idea of, and this is similar to truth. Like they have this objective idea of like, oh, this meaning, this will make me happy, or this will get me where I want to be. This is what I'm trying to get at. And it's external, because I think when people encounter their personal experience, they realize that happiness is elusive, and it's hard to define it, first of all.
Yeah.
And then it's hard to find it in life. And so I think we get really uncomfortable with that. And so we're like, oh, I got to go somewhere else. I got to find something that's sturdy. And so then we create this idol of meaning. I think this fabrication. And that's where I say, as I was saying before, this is a desire that can't be fulfilled. And so that's where we need to give it up. And that's where I get to nihilism. And I think a big thing for me was when I kind of came to terms with like losing my faith, I was like, I don't feel different. I don't feel like sad or like I lost purpose or meaning, which is surprising to me because I was on the same train of like purpose and meaning. That's like what we need. I remember like I was just on a walk and I'm like Cole, are you sad? I'm like, no, I don't feel sad. Like I feel fine. And I realized it was because all along I wasn't actually seeking purpose or meaning. I was just seeking happiness. And so when I lost this purpose and meaning, I think I just lost the idol of what I thought happiness was. And I think we have to come to grips with what we're actually looking for. And I think that's so helpful. Like a big conversation I had with a friend recently was how we were talking about like his personal experience with the religion and how, especially like in like evangelical Christianity and just a lot of like modern denominations, it's all about like having a life-changing experience and just being changed forever.
Yeah.
And like, oh, like everything's better now. And he's like committed and he's gone through all that. And he's like, I feel fucking awful. Like this sucks.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I asked him, like, do you think you might be like searching in the wrong spot? Like, do you think that maybe this search for like, why are we looking to like metaphysical truth claims for like to improve our like personal experience? Like, why are we looking external? Let's look internal first. I think that is when you really think about the most intuitive way to find happiness. It's like, how can I alter my experience?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that gets into spirituality because I think spirituality is a real thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think all spirituality is just altering your experience in significant ways, which is something that we've talked about before with spiritual experiences and stuff.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. And I picked up, you used the word like want, how we don't always know what we want. And I think that is something I've thought a lot about, of that's another word we don't use very well. Like growing up, it's like, oh, I want, or I don't want to do my homework, but I do it anyway. Like this kind of almost feels like cognitive dissonance. And I think like the wanting, like knowing what we want, like you made the conscious choice to want to have that conversation at the Chick-fil-A. And like there's something you wanted there, and you're like, okay, I'm pretty sure I want this thing, that I think this thing leads to some kind of happiness. And I think that there is something to that with human experience of like, part of the game is figuring out what we do want. And I think like it's part of the problem with thinking that there is the thing that everyone should want. I think can be a problem because like I can even see it in like you and I are dressing differently right now. And I think that's like a representation. We both want slightly different things, want slightly different ways how we represent ourselves, slightly different vibe. Like some stuff resonates a little bit differently with you. Your pickleball music today was the 70s disco. Mine might have been either like pop punk or probably like folk country, or maybe it was a nice day, so maybe I throw some bro country on or something like that. Yeah. But that's like, both of those are slightly different wants, slightly different like happiness pursuits. And I don't know that either one is necessarily like, and perhaps the problem is thinking one of those is absolutely definitely better than the other to pursue. I think that that tends to be where we try to go, is one of them must be better. That's like a lot of like trying to like speak to that different, you're in my head, or I'm in my head, you're in your head, at like politics and relationships and all these other things, is that our way is the way. And now I don't subscribe to that there aren't better ways than others for finding this happiness thing. And I think that's where like, I think there is something to spirituality and like religion in like offering different ways to help you kind of see and resonate or find what resonates. Like when we've talked about like spiritual experience, stories, art. I think art, movies, music are all representing different things that we could potentially want and then showing it to us like beyond what words can kind of communicate to us. It's like, I think I kind of want something like that.
Yeah.
And that there's something about that song that's like, there's something there. And like, that's something that is for my specific route to happiness in some extent. And that's like how yours might be through 70s disco. There's something there, and mine might be through Zach Bryan or something like that. What do you think about that?
I think yeah, it is important to recognize that even though we have different wants, and I think they're subjective, in my subjective experience, there's obviously going to be worse ways of getting what I want and better ways of getting what I want. And also, I think that we're not completely like different. I think generally people like want the same thing. It just surfaces in a lot of different ways.
Yep.
Like I would say, like with music, like we both want to feel happy.
Yep.
We both want to feel like relate to the music, and we just do that in different ways, right? And I think this is, I really like that you brought this up, because I think this ties really well into like the utility of religion in society. Because I think what religion has been doing is basically takes like a stereotype of what people want, and like a blanket coverage of like, oh, this is probably what people want. People probably want this type of meaning. They probably want community. You know, they probably want, like with Christianity, like a fatherly figure, like God the Father. They probably want to feel good about like the shame they have for doing bad things, so let's give them redemption. And it's like this blanket, like, oh, this is probably what people generally want. And I think that was great in history when one thing I love about modern society is that we have time and leisure to decide what we want and to think through our worldviews. But you look back like 500 years ago, like, or just, like you're living on a farm.
Yep. You and I were tilling the field.
Yeah. And like, I don't have time to think about what I want. All I have time to do is make sure I'm surviving. Okay, like that's like base level. Like I what I do know is I want to live, but it's not much past that. And so I think it was very beneficial to go to a church and kind of get filled in on all of that stuff. And it's like, yeah, I have no time to figure this stuff out for myself, right?
Yeah, it's relying on kind of it's a certain like trust in the tradition of others, that there's something there to what they're kind of like speaking to, I guess.
Yeah. And I wouldn't say, in that case, I wouldn't say like, well, it is like a trust. You do have to trust, but I would say there's not necessarily a choice, because like I'm saying, you didn't really have an option.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, well, this is what I was like. I was raised in a Christian environment, and I don't have time to explore anything else, what works for me exactly. So I like, this is my only option. Like this is better than nothing, right?
Yeah.
And I would like to think with the progress of society, I do think that I don't want to say like religion needs to go away right now, but I think we're kind of in like a growing pains period of where we're kind of figuring out our relationship with religion.
Yep.
And then I think it needs to stick around right now, but I think eventually we all become so progressed that we're all able to build our perfect models that are completely customized to our experience. And so we don't need this stereotype anymore, this like blanket coverage. So that's how I would view like utility of religion in society.
And we've talked about that before, and like I think my conception, like we've talked about this before. I'm not convinced, or I don't think that like that's a little bit too strong. I question whether that like is the end goal, or whether that can happen.
Yeah.
And I think there is something interesting to like that there is the opportunity now to like to learn. And that's kind of like when you see for like there's 1,000 years of like the kind of like Catholic Christendom, and you woke up, you went to the same church you grew up in, and then with like the printing press, like it kind of came about like 150 years before the Protestant Reformation, and then ideas started trickling out. And it started like, oh, there might be this other way to kind of think about things or approach things. And then like you think of Galileo. He wrote, and like, here's a different way of looking at like how we look at the stars. And there is, I think that is something the kind of like conservative bent like gets wrong, that there is something really good to this, like adding different kinds of information, looking at things from different perspectives, because it adds like rather than thinking like, okay, the West is right, the East is wrong. Like the East tends to think of, this is a very, very, very broad like claim of stereotype of the East, but it tends to think of things in like cycles, that human life, civilization, and it's kind of like in Hindu religion, it's the cycle of reincarnation. Like things just keep on going. It's got in this massive cosmology of like millions of years that there's like comes to this end point where it's like this complete rebirth of the world, and then it kind of like trickles, and then it does it again. And there is something to like, that is how a lot of life is, this cycle of like another generation comes up, and then they like grow in this particular way, and then like it's kind of like a normal curve where you start out here and then you will end there at death. It's kind of like a raising up, and there's a lot of this. There's the analogy that history rhymes, like that there's the whole like, if you don't understand history, you're doomed to repeat itself. It never quite repeats, but there is this kind of like pattern cycle of rhyming of like a massive thing happens, like the Civil War, and there's this like, okay, America is now trying to figure itself out again. And then World War II kind of happens, and this figuring itself out again. And now we're kind of like, okay, 9/11, a lot of political violence. We're trying to figure ourselves out again. Like that's, if you look at it from the cycle standpoint, this like, okay, that offers something. Like that's a theory again of looking at things where traditionally in the West, it's like this linear thing. It's like we're kind of like going in this direction. It's like linear. Everything is kind of like feeding in. It's logical, but it's kind of like, well, kind of like repeats. There's patterns, and looking at the world from a patterned kind of thing, the yin and the yang kind of a balance of opposites pushing against each other kind of.
I think one thing I like a representation of the West and its idea of progress is I think Karl Marx, I think he had the idea of like an arrow, like pointing forward, and that's progress. Like you're saying, like linear.
Yep.
And I completely agree that there's definitely some validity to the idea of cycles. But I think I think if you join those together, it's like, okay, things do repeat, but it's more of like types and shadows.
Maybe like a cycle that keeps on. It's kind of spun, like it's like it might look on a graph like an arrow, but it's kind of like this this wave that scales up a little bit, if you were to look at kind of like the progression of history.
I also I was thinking of something similar. I think I was thinking of was like an upward spiral. So like you kind of like go down a little bit, then you go up, then down, but your overall trajectory is forward. And going back to one thing I wanted to touch upon is, you were talking about like how even though religion like changes and does progress in that way, it's like progress isn't necessarily being removed from society. And what I would say is this idea of like everyone basically like having the resources to build their own like personal like worldview and like structure for seeking happiness. I would say that's just another very advanced and unfamiliar form of religion. And so I would say, like religion, I would say like we agree. It's just that I'm thinking of a way more extreme version of it that I don't think will happen anytime soon. So I would say like it still sticks around in that way. I just think that, and religion is also an interesting word because it's like, I'm willing to call it religion, but I mean, religion wasn't even a concept until like the Catholic Church came around. And it was like religio and like pagans. And I remember like I was reading about how like the Catholic Church, they went to India, I believe, and they saw like the cultural beliefs and practices, and they're like, oh, this is religion. And it's like, no, it's not really a structure. It is still like a common like cultural like tradition.
Zeitgeist, almost like a common cultural like hive mind is the term we had used earlier.
I love that idea. But it's not like the structure. And so I think the idea of religion is like a very Western concept. But I'm willing, like but also it's like the word religion has changed so much and it's used in so many different contexts. But I'm willing to say like religion will stick around. It's just not going to look, it's going to look very, very different.
And I my senior seminar for my religion major in college kind of like looked at this question of like, what is religion? That was very much a 1900s thing of asking like, can we define it? And I think it's very hard to define what a religion is or what religions are. I think religiosity might be a slightly better thing, kind of like the propensity to be religious, in that like if religious is kind of like this human tendency to like create this like hive mind kind of like cultural fabric of reality, that each of us personally have that, and then like cultures have that, like families have that, like kind of on up the scale of human interaction. I think we talked about that. It was either over coffee or in the car or something of like this, like at every level there's like human personality. It's like this collective personality at the top, and then it's like on down to individual.
I think this is a really interesting idea. I've never thought about it as like, I've always thought of like we need to give up religion, but it just might be like, I believe that just needs to be vastly different. And maybe we could define religion as like, I think a nice way to define it is like, okay, you have these spiritual experiences. Because I'm really big on like the validity of spiritual experiences. I think everyone has them, no matter if one religion says another religion doesn't. No matter what, even if you have no religion, you have spiritual experiences. It's just vast, extraordinary states of consciousness, basically. And
personality altering states almost.
Like where it's like, it has a lot to do with like your conception of self. That's why you get like spiritual, like Eastern traditions, they talk a lot about ego loss. And I would say maybe religion is like, okay, we have these spiritual experiences, and like experience, I think, is like the most true thing. And then religion is like going back to this idea of like knowledge representation and models is basically trying to like put that in a structure and formalize it.
It's kind of like that. It's a kind of like ordering process, naming process, categorizing things. And I think like there is this tough like human balance of being overly rigid and then overly like loose, because like you can see people who like continually like live open, like they are perpetually pursuing like neuroplasticity and like that's kind of like I feel like that's a stereotype of the hippies in the 60s, is they were always tripping and it was this like chaotic loose thing and there wasn't any rigidity. And it's like I think a lot of people, and like this, I think is what you were getting at earlier on, is it was like too rigid of this is what it is. And then it requires this like, and that's what like your spiritual experience of sorts was like, okay, the openness is good. And like humans need that as well. But then it's like after a certain time, we start like putting pieces together to kind of build a structure. And the problem can be is like when we get too structured with that later in life, it's like it's the I like having some amount of Socrates' like wisdom is to know that you don't know. It's like holding with like, okay, I think there's something here. Holding it with like an open hand, always learning, always like experiencing different things. And I think that could go with your kind of idea of if there's like this hypothetical progressed religiosity sense of like, and that's where I think like more formal religion of like these structures, I think that because I've done some of this myself of like, there's these bits from like Catholic tradition and theology that I gravitate towards. But there's some things in like Eastern Christianity of like preserving the mystery. And like there's more of an emphasis there. Catholicism, I think, has more emphasis on mystery than say evangelical or Protestant things. Like there's right before the Eucharist is consecrated, it's mystery of faith. It like mysterium fidei is like this prayer that's said. It's like the mystery of faith. It's like this something is happening here. And the East emphasizes that more. And so I like the idea of the East emphasizing that. And there's some things of like the kind of active participation of Catholicism, but then there's stuff from like contemporary, like more science, philosophy, like maybe like I don't know, like certain wellness things of like Andrew Huberman or like Chris Williamson, like some of his like insights bits that he talks about of like quotes and from different thinkers. But then maybe there's like this Stoic concept of memento mori. And I think that kind of getting at this like somewhat piecemealing a personal like religiosity or something like that.
Yeah, I think you raise a good point that I think maybe religion, like these religious structures, should more turn into like schools of thought and traditions, and they should be treated that way. I think because I do definitely agree that I've learned plenty from certain like religious traditions, right? And so I think they should stay around in that way, for sure. But I think it's going to take a lot of change for that to happen because we don't look at religion like that like today. We look at it instead of like using religion as like different schools of thought to piece together your own personal like religious view. It's this is like I'm idolizing truth. I think this is like an objective truth. That's what I want. So I'm going to take it for something it's not and take advantage of that. So I think that's an interesting side of the argument. It's like, it's like when I say I want religion to go away, I don't mean like we lose like Christianity and like all of its traditions.
Burn all the churches.
Yeah, like definitely not. Like definitely. I mean, at the very least, even if it wasn't useful for like building your own personal worldview, it's just beautiful, and it's like just a piece of culture.
Valuable to that,
Yeah. So, one thing I would like to touch upon that I like that you brought up is like the idea of like Socrates, like the wisest man in the world is the one that admits that he knows nothing. But at the same time, Socrates still like pursued knowledge.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's like, I think what I said like earlier before we got here was like hold strong opinions loosely and not loose opinions strongly. So, and I think that goes to, I think that's a big mindset shift I think we need to have in society.
Yeah. That has been something that's resonated with me because like that's if you I don't know, it's the benefit of staying and having some amount of openness. Like a experience I had with that was I took a trip to Greece back in school. I had a class that was studying the archaeology of ancient Greek religion.
No way.
It was a really cool class, and we got to go to Greece. We got to go to all these like ancient like temples and all this stuff. But one of the most impactful things was actually eating Greek food while we were over there.
Yeah.
I had this revelation. It was like, I am not eating the best food that there is in America. And that was like, okay, I just need to start trying things of like, and that's like, I think the value of that openness, something like I was kind of like content with food. I didn't like take very much care of like what I was eating. I didn't have like, it's like, okay. And like food wasn't something special. And then this thing almost like from outside, it was almost like a tiny, like spiritual experience with food is like, oh gosh, there's a whole lot more to life in this one area. That I had it was this Greek mixed meat plate. We were like, okay, guys, like there were about 5 of us in our friend group. We were like, we're going to just go no matter what the meal expenses were for this one thing, we're gonna go find a nice restaurant, and we found like a rooftop restaurant right in the shadow of the Athenian Acropolis.
Damn. Okay.
So it's like we can look right up there, and there's like the statue of Athena and the whole walls on top of this Acropolis.
Yeah.
And I had this Greek mixed meat plate. It's like you just eat everything, and it's like fantastic, and then you didn't feel sick afterwards, like you kind of would at like going to, I don't know, like Thanksgiving Day meal, like you
like
just
food
like
coma.
yeah, and that was like, I now know I am not having the best food, and like if I would have been like, oh yeah, American food is the best, like I might not have tried that stuff, like and now I'm like moving here to Austin. There's so much more food options available than in small town Indiana. It's like I had sushi for the first time like 3 weeks ago, and it's just like and it was all right. I didn't love it, but it's like,
but you tried it.
Yes.
And there was like value within just finding out what it was.
Yeah, because there's a shot. It would have been my favorite thing.
Yeah. I think that's really fun to think about. One thing I mentioned earlier was how in our modern age we have more like time to like explore and like build our own worldviews. And I think in addition to that, another thing the modern age affords us is that just the actual access, like not only the time to look for it, but I think so many people like just don't take advantage of this in any way. Yeah. Like a big thing that I think I was watching Naval Ravikant on Modern Wisdom, and the thing that really stuck with me is he was saying like, where you live is one of the most important things that you can choose. Yeah. Yet no one, like, or not no one, probably the majority of people don't even decide or don't even explore that option. And I think that's with a lot of different things is like, there's so much things out there that we can explore, and you're just sitting in the same spot forever. Like not only like with your physical location, but just with your knowledge and your experiences. I think a quote that really, I think, ties into like just what you were saying about trying new things and, you know, experiencing new experiences is a quote that goes, the limits of your knowledge are the limits of your world. And you could like trade out knowledge for like lived experience. The limits of your lived experience are the limits of your world. And all of us have the option to expand that. Why not? Yep. So I'm a big believer in that.
And especially like, I think probably the single most impactful episode of Modern Wisdom. It was one that I think it was like episode 623 or something like that I listened to 2 years ago. Is this guy Bill Perkins? He was talking about his book that was titled "Die with Zero," kind of this like finance, kind of like a different approach to finances. And what he talked about, it was kind of like memento mori, of like you only like know that you will die, so you will live, kind of a thing, and like knowing what season of life to best like do things in. And I think like it's something that can be missed in more like conservative leaning groups, is that going and experiencing things like go and channel the openness for like your 20s. And that is, I think, something that a lot of people are like, yeah, like enjoy your 20s, go have fun and do that. And then like, but if you're, it's kind of like the midlife crisis stereotype of the guy in like who hits 50 and he's like trying to like be that again. It like doesn't seem to fit. And it's, that's another kind of like slightly Eastern cycle thing. It's like finding what part of the life cycle to put these different pieces in. It also makes me think of what I think probably the main quote that stuck out to me from Chris Williamson's show was "Choose your regrets," because you definitely can't have everything right now. Like you can't get. I think he talked about like trying to find the perfect optimized like. If you can just figure out all the different variables, have the perfect thing now. Yeah. When in reality, it's a little bit more of, okay, you got to figure out what are those things that you want, but then also like choosing what you're okay not having. Yeah. And I think the oftentimes my wrestling has been like, okay, I got to know what I want. But sometimes you just don't know. And that's what I think this like experience and openness, it's like, okay, this stuff does seem to kind of align with this like resonance happiness thing.
Yeah.
And that's another thing I've been thinking about of like, because we've talked some about the impact of art, like these spiritual experience type things with art. Like a particular one for me was the Dune movies, Dune 1 specifically, Dune 2. And I remember it's kind of funny. I like at the end of Dune 2, I was just like sitting there up at the credits, like just kind of like
days.
Yes,
like,
days. And all my
happened?
fraternity brothers, they were like, when the credits come, they're all like stretches like, and then they talk about like, oh yeah, that character or that scene that was really good. I'm just like, and trying to figure out like why did that like something from the movie hit me. It's like I didn't know ahead of time that these things that perhaps it was the romance story or the adventure or something about like the relationship with the natural world that the characters had. I didn't know that those things resonated with me going into it, but I came out like there's something there. And that's one thing I've been kind of thinking about is that mysterious relationship of almost something like outside of you, like kind of like hitting you in that like soul, spirit, gut, heart kind of thing. And like kind of puzzling like what is that? Is that something? Because some traditions might say that that's like a past life, like that's resonance from a past life. Some might be that's God's given purpose for you, and that's like I don't know, and I don't have like a like thing that I believe that is yet, but I think there is something to that like personal want, happiness, pursuit thing, and that there are like parallels and relationships between what you want, and there's like different flavors. And to kind of tie this back into religion is I think like optimally, like if you were to build the optimal religion, it would be that which like allows you to taste all the different flavors to see like what more resonates. Like if there was somehow kind of like this round table of ideas that you can like get exposed to, like this one here and then that one there and then that one there, and you can figure out like, okay, what resonates and what kind of like speaks to that thing that's like got spoken to when I watched Dune or listened to a Zach Bryan song, or when I see the sunset over Lady Bird Lake here in Austin or whatever. That I think that's what those things do best. That's what stories do, is they try to like show these different things that might resonate with your like happiness want thing that we each have. What do you think about that?
Well, one thing I would ask you is, what do you think the utility is in like formalizing these experiences and like what resonates with you? Like, why do you think that's needed?
Perhaps it's because I've been wrestling with a little bit. Like I had a minor version of one of those experiences this week. There's the book behind you, Red Rising. I stayed up till 1 a.m. Tuesday night this week to read the last 70 pages. And like, I think my desire is kind of to like, kind of understand like how that like to know what that thing that resonates with me is, so I can try to like add it to my life. There's something there that I want. I don't know exactly what it is, because I kind of like use the word dreams, like we have a dream of like, and part of I think human experiences to like with all these different things, with art, with experiences, is like kind of bringing that into clarity almost. It's like if it's a picture, like a very blurry kind of picture painting of the life that you kind of want, and you gotta like, I don't know, maybe it's kind of a goofy analogy of like a Minecraft map. You gotta like go around the world and it kind of like fills in. Like maybe that's kind of what it is. And so like the formalizing question, perhaps it's like, because I don't know if I'm really craving like a systematic way of like doing it, but I want to understand like what is it that I crave, and is that like our crave that was like spoken to me by Dune or whatever, is that possible to like put that into life, like some aspect of, if it's like the romantic relationship between at the end of Red Rising Book 1, it's like this Mustang and Darrow, like this kind of like there's something in that that resonates with me. Is there some way I can put that into my life? I think is kind of the question.
Okay.
And like figuring out what resonates in the story, and then what about that is supposed to like be brought into my world, and how is that acted out, kind of might be like what I'm looking for, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so it's more of like, okay, I want this thing. I had this experience and this was great. How do I get more of it, basically?
Kind of. And like, is there something there of like, is this meant to be brought into like, is there some aspect of that relationship that can be channeled in my life? If there's something that I want, there's something that resonates.
Yeah.
Can I make that, basically take it from this ethereal, like, maybe not ethereal, but like dream story reality, and put it into the, like my everyday experience, if that makes sense, to almost like be an extension of that Darrow Mustang or Paul and Chani or whatever the pick your character in your favorite thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I would agree with that. I think one thing to keep in mind though is that you like said the word like ethereal, and like I'm trying to bring it down to earth and like bring it into my life. It's, well, like you're not looking, like if you were like, let's go back to like Darrow and Mustang, like their romantic relationship, and it's like this like more abstract thing because it's from a story, right?
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, I'm gonna bring this into my life, and that's why I'm kind of systematizing it and just figuring that out and grappling with that. Well, I would say technically when you are trying to get that into your life, it's not like you want like the formal structure of that. Like you want the exact same relationship, and not like, or like you just like you want the context of what that like took place in. I'm not really wording it well, but like you want what it looks like, basically. And so, but then when you do have it in your life, what you're going to be experiencing and what you enjoy isn't going to be like the fact, like you're not going to be like sitting in a relationship and be like, oh, I like this because of like the way it sounds, or because of this fact, you know. No, you're going to like it because you're experiencing like more ethereal experience through that relationship. Because like any relationship I have, it's not like when I like decide like, is this relationship good for me? I'm not like, oh, well, like let's write down the facts of the relationship. You know, it's not. This is something we were talking about before about dating. Is I think so many people look for like values and like things they can put on paper, or like, oh, like how do our personalities, like, are they compatible? Like, what's our taste in music? How many kids do you want? And I think at the end of the day, we're asking that to, the only reason why we're asking that is because we want to get to the point where it feels right. And I say, why not cut to the chase and just go instantly with your gut and be like, does this feel right? I think this like ethereal experience is like more true than any other like view of it. Like that's the most true thing that you can have. So
yeah, and a lot of those questions, they're trying to like kind of it's like that knowledge representation thing again. They're trying to like get at that, but they aren't the bike.
Yeah.
They're kind of like the model, and they're like, because they're semi important, but it's like, you can align theoretically on those values, or you can like the same music and it will like make sense. Like this relationship could happen. It could make sense. But then you just don't have that like gut vibe, existential like interest in the person or whatever. And I think that's I think kind of parallels your like, I don't know the exact word to use, like question or concern or like hedging against like the systematization. But I think that there's a lot to that, like the existential value, like the human experience, lived experience. I think like that's been a big theme of the conversation. And then that's like another thing that's speaking to is the value of that, of the experience. And so it's supposed to go from there, like how is that, and to kind of like tie the conversation together, how is that, I guess we've kind of talked about it, of like primarily differs from how you used to think. Maybe there's like, or where you started noticing that needed to shift to kind of like tie things together a little bit.
I think I tried to replace experience with objective truth. And I think I love using the word like idol, because I think we take idols like, like with the Israelites, when Moses went up to Mount Sinai and got like the tablets from God, they didn't like how God was. And so they built a God that they would like. They didn't like that they couldn't see him, so they built a God that they could see. They built the golden calf, right? And I think my whole life I was building a golden calf for truth. And my golden calf was that truth is some objective, non-relative, like sturdy thing. And I think I also was building a golden calf for like what happiness is. I'm building a golden calf of like, meaning, like objective purpose, which ties into the truth. And I think my golden calf it was something real. It was something in the sense that like, it was like facts.
Very solid, kind of in a like bland way, maybe. Yeah,
and just something that felt comfortable, because it's uncomfortable. I think, especially for people of certain personality types, like I can personally relate to, is that really getting in line with these like more experiential truths is uncomfortable, because it's more comfortable like being able to put my hands on something and play with it and feel like it's sturdy and objective. So yeah, that's where I'd tie everything in. Is I think I had idols of what truth is, what meaning is, and also like I had an idol that was a representation of the real truth, and now I'm just casting all of those away and just looking at base reality, looking at base experience, and accepting it for what it is. And any desires I have in contradiction to that, I'm letting go of.
I hadn't looked at that specific story in that way, of this like the Israelites being uncomfortable, because it is kind of like a representation of that distance that we have. If like experience, truth, reality is something that's like God up on the mountain, that it's hard to see, and like and then it kind of feels like there's this like little guy, like if it's Moses, who's the kind of somewhat mediator of like between that and us, and maybe that's kind of like that distance is uncomfortable, and we're trying to grasp for that, like to have that thing, which also kind of like makes sense. And like if you think about that story, they just had like this like rigid slavery in the story, and they're kind of out in the wilderness, and they're like, what's going on? And then they're like, let's just grab something, because what we're kind of going for is this like, we don't know what it is. It's kind of like not knowing what you want, kind of, and you're just like trying to grab for anything. And so you just grab this golden calf thing that's just like doesn't actually give you anything, but it's instead of like that patience you were talking about at the very beginning of like letting, like, kind of being at ease with the uncomfortability of like with the experience and everything. I think that I like that image of that story for that.
Yeah, I think something that I was even thinking about, like, analogy is like the patience. I was even like thinking about bringing that, and I like that because I think sometimes, yeah, we want, it to be immediate. And I think with like everything, like I was saying earlier, is like, not only is it expected, but it's almost like looked as like a virtue to have like a really thought out, like strong worldview. And it's looked at as like conviction, when I rather think it's like inappropriate stubbornness. And so I think with society and with other people and with ourselves, we need to be more patient with like letting us build our worldviews based on experience and letting it come to us instead of, like you said, grasping and creating those idols.
And then maybe to kind of like somewhat wrap up of like the different stories and the different traditions, because stories kind of like give us the opportunity to kind of get a sense of like seeing the world through someone else's experience, kind of like in Red Rising, it's all in the first person narrative of Darrow. So you're kind of like putting on Darrow's glasses. If we're kind of like all wearing glasses, it's like we're going to take ours off for a minute and put Darrow's on and see the world through his, and we can kind of experience the world through that. And so maybe that's like how the different religious traditions and stories, because like you and I both love reading and learning, and like Descartes came up, Aristotle came, like all these different people, they're kind of like offering different little experiences, kind of. And I think I do like that of this getting or making that an emphasis of like this like personal religion building project, to put it kind of like that I am very much for that, in a sense of like, because that allows you to build like kind of, rather than needing to feel like you have to, because it's really hard to go experience literally everything like from like a physical financial standpoint. Like I can't go and like go, I mean, I would really like to go see the hills that Braveheart was filmed on and like see like where the battles happen, but I can kind of like get at that a little bit through watching the movie. And I think though that's where like my love of stories as like a religious thing, like religiosity, I think is this story building kind of process, is that those things help us have those other experiences to know like what we kind of want, that flavor of happiness that like we're looking for, whether that's like something that's given to us from something divine or like whatever, however, like I don't know what that is. That's another like mystery thing. But it's like some interesting like part of our existence is that. And so I think that's kind of like a good somewhat wrap up of like a lot of the things we've talked about of happiness, of stories, of like personal religion building. Do you have any like final thoughts in this whole vein?
Yeah, I'll give a little analogy to end. It's something I heard recently, and I've been kind of moving around in my head. So let's imagine a world where love wasn't a thing, and everyone acted in very rational, like transactional ways. Like all relationships, it's like, oh, like I'm doing it for this transaction. Like you give me that, I give you this, like tit for tat. And let's say there's one person in this world, or two people in this world, who they had a relationship and then they felt love, what we know as love, which certainly isn't rational or transactional. It's something more. And so they had this experience, and when they go to other people and they're trying to explain it, they're like what do you say? Well, it's like yes, it is kind of transactional. It's like, yeah, we do give and we get, right? But there's something more.
Yeah.
And I think this whole conversation is we have that version of that story, but with our religious experiences or spiritual experiences. And all we're trying to do is just describe it. Just ineffable experience. And it seems like in vain, but we have to at least try.
I think that's a good way to end it. I like the analogy. Cole,
thank you.
Thanks again for coming back to Austin. I'm looking forward to gonna go hang out the rest of the day and
yes, sir.
Have some experiences, man.
Yep. Let's go experience.
Let's do it.